Hey, I'm Cindy with Atomic Trailer Chicks, and today we are going to replace some butyl tape. So let's take a look. I have a 1966 Aristocrat Land Commander, and I got my trusty ladder. So this is what we call J-rail, and what it does is it acts as a channel to take any rainwater down and over. It's kind of like a gutter for your trailer, down and over to the side and off your trailer. Well, what happens is it's actually, if you can see this stuff right in here, it's called butyl tape, and it's a sealant that helps keep this watertight. Well, after, 20 odd years or 40 odd years or 60 odd years, however your trailer, however old it is, it gets really, really cracked and brittle, and it is no longer watertight. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take all this J-rail off, we're going to clean it off, and then we're going to put on new butyl tape. So stay tuned. Of course, the first screw, oh, there we go. I was going to say the first screw didn't want to come out. Okay. So something that's really handy when you're doing this is one of these little magnetic trays to stick all your screws in, or I use a pocket. And then if you look down, I've put down some paper. That's to catch any screws and old butyl tape that come off while you're doing this. When I do this too, I look at the screws, and you can see always the screws, the heads are going to be really rusted, but the body of this screw is actually not rusted at all, which is a good sign. That means it wasn't in contact with water, so yay. And what I'm using is just a cordless Ryobi drill, and you can pick them up at Home Depot. They're pretty cheap. And then there's this drill bit that is a hex head 1/4 inch, and that's for these little tiny hex screws that we're using here, or that we're taking out. Notice I also closed my windows. I had them open earlier, but these jalousie windows, the ones with the small panes, get broken so easily. So I closed all the windows just to kind of keep them safer, and so that I don't accidentally break one. Okay, so here's kind of a warning sign up here. I've got one screw that kind of came out crooked, and it's really rusty. You can see it. And you'll also see that the butyl tape is cracked and is kind of sagging a little bit. So that might be a leak. It's really good that we're doing this. Even if you don't have any experience, there's no reason why you can't do this. I don't really consider myself super handy, but all you need is a drill, the drill bit. Take out all the screws, take off the J-rail, put the butyl tape back on, put the J-rail back on, and put new screws in. That's it. So really, as long as you can use a screw drill, you're golden. So I'm having trouble with this one screw here. It's really hard to reach with my drill bit. So I'm gonna kind of get these big fat pliers here. I'm going to take this J-rail. I'm gonna carefully bend it down just a tiny bit. See if I can have better purchase on this screw. All these flies going into my mouth. All right, hang on. I'm gonna bend it down a little bit more. Oh, there we go. That's all it took. So J-rail bends really easily, so you have to be really careful with it, but you can bend it and bend it back if you really, really need to. Okay, of course, Murphy's Law, ran out of battery. I'm most of the way done. I still have that last third to do, so be back tomorrow. Hey, we're back a couple days later. Life, work, they kind of get in the way of my obsession. So we're going to finish off what we started. And what you didn't see is I actually came back here that night and got another battery. And I put a screw up on the top there just to keep it in place, because I was afraid if it was really windy while I was gone, it would take the J-rail off and bend it. And I didn't want that to happen. So I just secured it for the time being, because I didn't want to leave it unsecured. Okay, so we're going to finish taking all these screws off. Okay, so we took the piece of J-rail off carefully, and we placed it down on the ground. Careful not to bend it out of shape. So now what we're gonna do is take just a paint scraper. I'm using a metal one because I'm gonna be really careful, but if you're worried about scratching your paint, you probably wanna use a plastic one. It will probably scratch the paint less than this. But I know that my butyl tape here is super, super brittle, so I'm not gonna have too much of a problem. So I'm just gonna carefully lift this crumbling butyl tape. And this is what happens when butyl tape gets old. It crumbles, it gets brittle, and it doesn't protect the trailer from water. I gotta remember to close my mouth so it doesn't get in my mouth. And this is the part of the process that is kind of tedious and will take a little bit longer than the rest of it. You want to try to make sure that you get as much off as you can. And after we take it all off, we're gonna scrub it down. I didn't want to make a mess of the trailer lot where I have my trailer, so that's why I put the paper down to catch all the old butyl tape. Okay, so we got all the butyl tape pretty much off of the trailer and off of the J-rail. So now I'm just gonna use some white vinegar and half with water. Actually, maybe a third of white vinegar and then 2/3 water. And I'm gonna take a scrubby sponge and I'm gonna start scrubbing off all this gunk, all the dirt that has collected. And see, this dirt just kind of sticks to the trailer because there's still a little bit of residue from the butyl tape. So I'm just going through and I'm gonna be scrubbing it off and getting it as clean as I possibly can before I put the new butyl tape on. And because I just got a new manicure yesterday, I am wearing gloves. But usually I don't bother wearing gloves. It's just vinegar. It's not gonna hurt too much. And then I'm using a rag because it kind of makes my trailer kind of dirty. So I use a rag as I go, just wiping it so it doesn't just streak dirt all down the trailer. So while I'm doing this and doing the top, my daughter Georgia is going to be working on getting all the butyl tape off the J-rail. There's not as much on there, but there still is some on there. So she's working on that. So now you can see that that whole seam is super clean. We got it as clean as possible. And you can tell, if you can zoom on one of those staples, that trailers are actually held together primarily by big, heavy staples, believe it or not. I mean, the screws in the J-rail help, and there are bolts all over the place, but there's a lot of staples. So first thing we're gonna do is, now that it's nice and clean, and we actually did one last wipe to get residue off with rubbing alcohol, we're gonna take butyl tape. So this is brand new butyl tape. You can buy it on Amazon. Not that expensive. I think it was like 25 bucks for a big roll. This is super sticky. It's kind of like chewing gum, and it comes on this roll, which has the backing, and then it has the sticky side. Actually, both sides are kind of sticky. If for some reason it's like getting really gummy, like you just stepped in chewing gum and it's sticking to everything, you might want to wait till it is cooler. We're actually doing this sort of towards the evening, so it's cooler. It's easier to work with when it's colder or cooler. It gets really hard to work with when it's hot. So just a tip. All right, so now I'm going to be putting this up along the seam, covering the seam as much as possible. Try to not get the ants in it. I'm going to try to do this as one continuous piece. The seam here is covered, and this is kind of a transition point because this is where the J-rail stops and goes on to another piece. So I'm going to kind of shove it in there really good to get that joint so that there's no gaps in the butyl tape. And as I'm going, I'm pushing down so that it gets into the crevices of this seam. I'm going to kind of follow the line that was there before. There was a line. Little hex screws that I took out. I went to Home Depot, found the same exact screws. They're actually, I think they're nickel or something, so hopefully they won't rust. And they're the same size, shape, and for some reason my last trailer they used 1 inch, but these are actually 3/4 inch, so I just matched what was taken off the trailer, which is always a good rule of thumb. And now we're gonna put up the J-rail. So when we're putting on J-rail, it's definitely helpful to have 2 people, and I'm going to put up screws in various places. I'm not going to screw them all down tight because I want to make sure that I fit it first and match up screw holes. Okay, so it is 8:20 now, and we finally finished. Yay, we've got it up. It looks really good. It went up pretty much without a hitch. There was only 1 screw that was kind of, well, 2 screws that seemed like they were a little off, but we figured it out. Take a look. Yay, and just for future reference, 1 package of butyl tape pretty much covers the whole one side of my trailer, and 1 package of these hex screws, there's 100 in each package. I have a little tiny piece over on the back of the trailer that I still need to do, but this package pretty much covered that 1 whole side, just so you know like how much to buy when you do this. All right, signing off.